It's so good to have you here. There are places you have never seen that feel. Somehow, like coming home. A bend in a road, a field at dusk, a doorway in a city you've never visited. The feeling arrives before the thought. Older than your life seems able to explain. Tonight, we follow it down into the cell, into the code, into the long, quiet inheritance carried in the dark. Close your eyes and breathe. You rest inside a body that quietly remembers things you never lived. Let that settle. Gently. Welcome to Sleepy Science Fact. And now, we begin. Sometimes a place you have never seen feels deeply familiar, as if you had stood there before. Scientists call this sensation déjà vu when it strikes a moment. And a quieter cousin of it haunts whole landscapes. For a long time, the standard explanation was simple. The brain had glimpsed something similar before and confused the new scene with an old trace. But the feeling can be stranger than that, attaching to places no memory could hold. Tonight's question opens here. In that small, uncanny ache, could a memory belong to you without ever having been made by you? We begin not with an answer, but with the mystery itself. The brain builds familiarity through a structure deep in each temporal lobe called the hippocampus. When you encounter something, it compares the moment against stored patterns and returns a quiet verdict. New or known. Familiarity is not a record of events so much as a feeling the brain manufactures. A signal that says, you have been here. Researchers have found that this signal can fire even when no true memory exists, lighting up recognition for the entirely unseen. That is the first crack in the old explanation. The feeling of having been somewhere does not always require having been there at all. Déjà vu touches most people at some point, more often in youth and more often when tired. One leading idea holds that it is a brief timing error, the brain registering an experience twice across a fraction of a second. So the second pass feels like a memory of the first. It is, in this view, a kind of harmless misfire. Yet the explanation that satisfies a flickering instant strains when the familiarity settles over a meadow, a coastline, a quality of light. Some feelings of recognition feel less like an error and more like an arrival. The question is, what, if anything, is being recognized? Long before brain scanners, people gave these feelings older names. They spoke of memories from before birth, of places known in another life, of an ache for a homeland never seen. The Welsh have a word, hireth, for a longing towards something lost that may never have existed. The Portuguese have saudade. Across languages, humans kept inventing words for a nostalgia without an origin. Science cannot test a poem, but it can ask why the feeling is so widespread that nearly every culture needed language for it. A sensation this common usually has roots in something the body is actually doing. Underneath every feeling you have ever had lies a molecule called DNA, a long coiled instruction written in just 4 chemical letters. It sits inside almost every cell. The same text copied trillions of times over. We tend to picture it as a fixed blueprint, the unchanging plan of a body. But the discovery that reshaped modern biology is that the blueprint is not read all at once or in the same way everywhere. Something decides which instructions are switched on and which stay silent. And that something, researchers have learned, can carry marks left by a life. The code is fixed. The reading of it is not. That layer of reading is the subject of a field called epigenetics, from a Greek root meaning above the genes. Epigenetics studies the chemical tags that sit on top of DNA and shape how it is used without altering the letters themselves. Think of the genome as sheet music, and the epigenetic marks as the markings a conductor adds. Softer here, louder there. The notes do not change, yet the performance does. These marks respond to the world, to food, to stress, to cold, and the central question of tonight begins to take a sharper edge. Could those markings, left by a life, somehow outlast it? The most studied of these tags is methylation, the attachment of a tiny chemical group, a methyl, onto the DNA at specific spots. Where methyl groups gather, genes are usually quieted. The way a finger pressed to a string mutes it. Where they thin out, genes can sing more freely. Your cells use methylation constantly to decide what a liver cell does versus a neuron, though both hold the identical code. It is a language of emphasis written in chemistry, and here lingers the seed of the mystery. Because emphasis, unlike the letters, is responsive. It listens to what happens to you. A second layer involves the spools the DNA is wound around. Proteins, called histones, 2 yards of genetic thread fit inside a cell only by coiling tightly around these spools. How tightly it coils decides whether a gene is reachable or buried. Loosen the wrapping and the instruction becomes available. Tighten it and the instruction disappears from view. Experiences can shift this packaging, opening some passages and closing others. None of this rewrites the underlying text. It only changes what the cell can find. The body, it turns out, keeps a kind of dynamic index of itself, edited by living. For most of the 20th century, biologists held a firm boundary. Whatever happened to you in life, your bad luck and your hard winters, could not be passed to your children through your genes. The germ cells that become eggs and sperm were thought to be sealed away from the rest of the body, untouched by experience. This wall had a name, the Weismann barrier, and it was treated almost as law. The old understanding said, inheritance was the dice of your code alone, never the diary of your days. Tonight's question asks, gently, whether that wall was ever quite as solid as it seemed. Something has already shifted across these 10 facts. Not in the science itself, but in the frame around it. We began thinking familiarity was a glitch and inheritance was sealed. Now both edges look softer. The brain can feel recognition for the unknown, and the genome can carry marks written by a life. These 2 threads have not yet touched, but they are reaching toward the same quiet question, the one the rest of tonight will follow. If a body can be marked by what its ancestors lived, could a feeling of homecoming be a mark you can sense but not explain? Consider the smell of rain on dry earth. It has a name, petrichor, and almost everyone finds it pleasant. Even people raised in cities far from soil. Researchers have wondered whether such broad, untaught preferences hint at responses laid down long before personal experience. We do not learn to find that scent soothing the way we learn a phone number. It seems to arrive already meaning something, as if the liking were older than us. Most of these reactions can be explained by shared human biology rather than inherited memory. Still, they show how the body can carry knowledge that feels personal, yet was never personally acquired. Newborns offer one of the clearest windows into this. A baby only hours old will turn toward its mother's voice and toward the language she spoke during pregnancy, distinguishing its rhythm from a stranger's. Infants have shown preferences for music and even flavors their mothers encountered before birth. None of this is conscious memory. It is the body tuned by exposure in the womb. It proves a humbler version of tonight's idea, that a life can be shaped by signals from before it began. The grand version, ancestral memory across generations, is far less certain, but the door is no longer closed. The clearest human evidence for inheritance, written by experience, comes from a tragedy. The Dutch hunger winter of 1944 to 1945, when a wartime blockade starved a population for several months. Decades later, researchers traced the children conceived during that famine and found lasting differences in their health and in the methylation patterns on certain genes. Remarkably, some of these molecular signatures appeared in the next generation too. It suggested that a season of hunger had left a chemical fingerprint that crossed at least one biological boundary. This is established, much studied, and sobering. A historical hardship had become, in part, heritable. Scientists are careful here, and we will be too. The Dutch hunger winter shows associations, patterns linked in time, not a proven chain of cause carried intact through the generations. Human lives are tangled with too many other influences to isolate a single thread cleanly. Researchers debate how much of what we see is true epigenetic inheritance and how much is shared environment or chance. The honest summary is that the marks are real, their meaning still argued. We hold the finding and its uncertainty together. That balance between something genuine and something not yet fully understood is the texture of this entire field. Animals let researchers test more directly what humans cannot. In one widely cited mouse study from 2014, animals were trained to fear a specific cherry blossom-like scent. Their pups, and even the following generation, showed heightened sensitivity to that same odor, despite never encountering it or the fear. The researchers found changes in the gene linked to detecting that smell. It hinted that a learned fear had passed down, not as a story, but as a tilt in biology. The result was striking and also contested. Other labs have found it hard to reproduce cleanly. In Miche, the door opened. Whether it opens for us is still unsettled. Why would evolution allow such a channel at all? One idea is that it offers a head start. If a parent's world held a particular danger or scarcity, a child arriving pre-tuned to that world might respond faster than one learning from scratch. A famine-marked metabolism that hoards energy could be life-saving in lean times, even if it harms in times of plenty. In this view, inherited marks are not memories of events, but inherited expectations about the world. The body wagers that tomorrow will resemble its ancestors' yesterdays. Sometimes the wager helps. Sometimes, when the world has changed, it quietly costs. It helps to separate three things that crowd together in tonight's mystery. There is memory, the recall of an event. There is instinct, a behavior wired into the species. And there is epigenetic predisposition, a tuning of how genes respond, shaped by ancestors and passed along. Birds migrating without being taught show instinct. A famine fingerprint shows predisposition. True inherited memory, the felt recall of a place a grandparent stood, has never been demonstrated in humans. Tonight's theory lives in the blur between these categories, where a predisposition can feel from the inside, almost like a memory you cannot place. Memory itself is not stored like a file in one drawer. It is distributed across networks of neurons, reconstructed each time you recall it, slightly remade in the act of remembering. There is no single cell holding your 10th birthday. This matters because it explains why the brain so easily produces feelings of memory without true content. If recall is reconstruction, the machinery can assemble the sensation of remembering from raw familiarity alone, with nothing real behind it. The brain is less an archive than a storyteller, and a storyteller can deliver the feeling of an old tale, even when the page is blank. The hippocampus, our familiarity engine, sits beside the amygdala, the structure that colors experience with emotion. They are neighbors, deeply wired together. This closeness explains why a feeling of recognition so often arrives soaked in feeling. A tenderness, a longing, a quiet grief. When familiarity fires near the amygdala, the brain does not just say known, it says known and dear. That pairing is the very texture of nostalgia. It is recognition wearing the colors of feeling. So, a place you have never seen can feel not only familiar, but beloved. The recognition and the emotion produced together by two structures that have always worked as one. There is also a humbler source for nostalgia toward unseen places. The human mind is built to find patterns and fill gaps. A landscape that resembles 100 images you absorbed without noticing. In films, in dreams, in childhood books, can trigger recognition for which you have no conscious source. The brain registers the match, but loses the receipt. The result feels like memory from nowhere. Much of what we call mysterious familiarity is this: an honest recognition whose origin was simply forgotten. We hold this explanation close because it accounts for a great deal without needing anything to cross the generations at all. Yet not all of it dissolves so neatly. Some researchers studying human universals note that certain landscape preferences appear across cultures with little learning. People tend to find scenes with open grassland, scattered trees, and a glimpse of water especially soothing. A pattern some call the savanna preference. The speculative reading is that we carry a faint tuning toward the environments where our species was shaped. This remains a hypothesis, not a settled fact. And skeptics offer simpler explanations, but it shows the kind of inheritance that could feel like memory. A body more at ease in a world its ancestors knew. Dreams complicate the picture further. In sleep, the brain stitches fragments into landscapes that have never existed, places vivid enough to ache for upon waking. You may have grieved a dream home for hours after rising. If a dreamed place can feel that real and that beloved, then the feeling of nostalgia clearly does not require a real origin. The brain can generate longing for a country it invented overnight. This is not a small point. It suggests that the homesickness for places you have never seen might be, at least in part, the residue of inner landscapes your sleeping mind built and then forgot. Still, the inherited tuning and the inner invention are not rivals so much as layers. Your sleeping brain does not build from nothing. It builds from the materials it was given, the predispositions and sensitivities you carry. A mind tuned by ancestry towards certain textures of place might dream those textures and wake longing for them. Unable to say whether the feeling came from within or from far behind, the honest answer may be both. Tonight's theory is most interesting not as a single mechanism but as a meeting point, where deep biology and nightly imagination produce a single, unplaceable ache. It is worth naming what would be required for the strongest version to be true, that a specific scene could be inherited as felt content. No known biological pathway carries that kind of detailed imagery in eggs or sperm. Epigenetic marks adjust the volume of genes. They do not encode pictures. So the literal idea that you remember your great-grandmother's village has no mechanism science can point to. What can be inherited is far quieter. A tilt, a sensitivity, a readiness. The mystery survives, but in humbler form, not a memory of a place, but a body more easily moved by certain kinds of places. 25 facts in. The shape of the question has changed. We arrived imagining either a glitch or a ghost. We have found something less tidy and more interesting. Familiarity is a feeling the brain can make without a source. Inheritance can carry chemical marks of a life, proven in famine cohorts and mouse studies. Though their reach into human feeling remains argued, the two threads have nearly touched, but not joined. What remains is the harder middle, how a molecular tilt, or a buried story, could ever become something you feel as longing. That is where the next arc begins, and the evidence deepens. Right now, in nearly every cell you have, methyl groups are sitting on your DNA, deciding in silence what to read and what to leave unread. You did not place them all. Some arrived with you, written before your first breath by lives you will never know. The question that just opened, how a chemical tilt could ever surface as a feeling, lives in exactly this quiet machinery, working through you now without instruction. Notice your breath. The reading of you continues whether or not you attend to it. Now we continue to understand how a molecular mark could touch a feeling. Follow the path of stress. When an animal endures hardship, its body floods with cortisol, and that flood can leave methylation changes on genes that govern the stress response itself. In studies of rodents, pups of stressed or neglectful mothers showed altered marks on a receptor gene, making them more reactive to stress for life. The hardship had become biology. This is the kind of inheritance that crosses from event toward experience, because a stress system tuned high colors how the world feels, turning ordinary moments tense or tender before any thought arrives. Human studies have looked for echoes of this in the descendants of people who lived through catastrophe. Research on the children of survivors of severe trauma found differences in stress-related gene methylation compared to others. The interpretation is fiercely debated, and the studies are small. Critics rightly note how hard it is to separate inherited biology from a childhood spent beside a wounded parent. The careful position is that something measurable appears, while its cause stays contested. We mention it not as proof, but as one more place where a life's hardship seems to leave a trace that the next generation somehow carries forward. What these stress findings share is a theme. What gets inherited is not a picture, but a posture. A nervous system can arrive in the world already braced, already tuned toward vigilance or toward calm. That posture is felt from the inside as mood, as temperament, as the background weather of a life. It is not a memory of what frightened an ancestor. It is a readiness shaped by it, and readiness, lived long enough, can feel like recognition. The body that startles easily in the dark is not remembering a specific night. It is wearing the shape of many nights it never saw. Consider how broadly methylation patterns vary with where and how people live. Researchers comparing populations find that diet, altitude, and environment leave distinct epigenetic signatures, some of which appear early and persist. A body shaped in mountains carries different markings than one shaped by the sea. These are not memories of mountains or seas. They are adjustments. The genome tuned to the world it expected. Yet they hint at how a sense of belonging to a kind of place could ride along in biology. a faint preference for the conditions one's lineage was calibrated to, surfacing as ease in some landscapes and unease in others. The clearest proof that experience reaches the genome comes from identical twins. They begin with the same DNA letters. Yet as they age, their epigenetic marks drift apart, shaped by their separate lives. Twins raised in different ways can end up with markedly different methylation patterns, despite identical code. This shows beyond argument that living writes on the genome's reading. The blueprint is shared, the annotations diverge. And if a single life can annotate so deeply in a few decades, it becomes easier to imagine annotations accumulating across the longer arc of a family. Faint inheritances layered one generation atop another. How could a mark even survive the journey between generations? It is harder than it sounds. When eggs and sperm form, and again just after conception, the embryo erases most epigenetic marks in a great wave of reprogramming, wiping the slate so development can begin fresh. This erasure is one reason scientists long doubted inheritance of acquired marks. The surprise of recent decades is that a small fraction of marks at specific sites seem to escape the wipe, slipping through the reprogramming intact. Inheritance through this channel is therefore not a flood, but a trickle. A few stubborn signals that survive the cleansing and arrive on the other side. That trickle matters because it sets the limits of tonight's theory honestly. Whatever crosses the generations does so through a narrow, well-guarded gate, and only certain marks pass. This is why no detailed memory could ride along. The channel is far too narrow and too noisy for imagery. What can pass is the simple kind of information. A gene turned a little up or down. A stress axis set a little high. The architecture of inheritance permits a whisper, not a sentence. And so the felt experience it could ever produce would also be a whisper, a tilt, a leaning, a wordless sense rather than a scene. Plants and simple animals show this inheritance more robustly than mammals do, which is itself a clue. A plant stressed by drought can produce offspring better prepared for dryness. The readiness passed through epigenetic channels across several generations. Worms exposed to certain conditions transmit responses for many generations. Mammals, with our aggressive embryonic erasure, seem to permit far less. This pattern suggests that as nervous systems grew complex, biology came to rely more on learning and culture and less on inherited molecular memory. We pass our deepest lessons now through stories and through care, not through the code. The genome's whisper grew quieter as the voice grew louder. This raises a gentler possibility for the feeling of inherited place. Much of what feels ancestral may travel not through DNA at all, but through the long chain of human nurture, a grandmother's descriptions, a family's foods, the particular light in stories told at the table, all seep into a child and settle below memory. Years later, a real landscape can match that buried impression and bloom into recognition. The inheritance is real. The channel is simply love and language rather than methylation. This explanation asks for no mystery and yet preserves the tenderness. The sense that you are recognizing something handed to you across time. Smell deserves special attention because it is the sense most tied to memory and the least mediated by thought. Odor signals travel almost directly into the brain's memory and emotion centers, bypassing the usual filters. This is why a scent can summon a feeling whole before you can name it. Some inherited sensitivities in animals act through smell, as the mouse fear study suggested. In humans, A scent on the wind in an unfamiliar place can trigger recognition for which you have no source, because the smell matched something stored beneath words. The nose, omniscient and direct, is where unplaceable familiarity most often slips through. The brain also generates familiarity through a quirk of timing in its own circuits. When the signal of perceiving a scene and the signal of recognizing it fall slightly out of step, the mind reads the present moment as already remembered. Brain imaging during déjà vu suggests it may be the memory checking system briefly firing on its own, flagging known when nothing is known. This is recognition without content, the pure feeling stripped of any source. It shows that the sensation tonight circles can be produced entirely within by ordinary machinery glitching for an instant. No inheritance required for the feeling to feel utterly real. Why, then, does the feeling so often attach to longing rather than mere recognition? Here the answer reaches into how humans make meaning. The brain dislikes a feeling without a story. When recognition arrives sourceless, the mind reaches for an explanation grand enough to fit the depth of the feeling. And a past life or an ancestral home satisfies where coincidence does not. The longing is real. The story is constructed to house it. We are pattern seekers who would rather have a beautiful explanation than none. Tonight's theory is partly biology and partly this: the human hunger to give a wordless ache a worthy origin. It is worth pausing on how reliable any of this is. Epigenetic inheritance in humans remains one of the more contested corners of biology. The famine cohorts and trauma studies are real but small and tangled with confounds. The animal results are stronger but do not transfer cleanly to us. Responsible scientists hold that some transmission likely occurs while resisting sweeping claims. We follow that caution. Nothing tonight asks you to believe that you carry a grandparent's memory. It asks only that you sit with a softer, better supported idea that a life can leave faint marks the next life carries, their meaning still being learned. Even granting all the caution, the picture that emerges is quietly moving. Your body is not a fresh document. It is a palimpsest, written over many times, carrying faint impressions of conditions you never met, the hunger of a distant winter, the vigilance of a hard generation, the calm of a settled one, may all leave their faint annotations in how your genes are read. You walk through the world tuned by lives that ended before yours began. Whether or not this ever surfaces as a feeling of place, it is true at the level of chemistry. You are, in part, an inheritance. 40 facts in, the evidence has gathered into a clear, careful shape. Experience can mark the genome. A thin channel lets some marks cross generations. What crosses is posture, not picture. And the feeling of unplaceable familiarity has at least 3 honest sources. A brain that makes recognition without content, a buried inheritance of nurture and language, and a faint molecular tuning toward the conditions of one's lineage. The question we began with has not been answered so much as opened wider. If all of this is acting at once, then a sense of homecoming in a strange place may be many quiet truths arriving as one feeling, somewhere in the dark behind you. Generations are quietly present in your cells, asking nothing of you. Let your shoulders lower a little. We'll keep going slowly. If the body carries inherited tilts, then some of what we call personality may be older than we are. A tendency toward caution, toward seeking, toward calm, might be partly an annotation written by ancestors and read by you. This does not erase your freedom. Marks are tendencies, not commands, and they can be reshaped by your own living. But it reframes the self as less a sealed individual than a current moment in a long stream. The implications ripple outward. The traits you thought purely yours may be the latest reading of a very old text, performed freshly in you. It also reframes healing. If hardship can leave epigenetic marks, can care remove them? In animal studies, the answer leans hopeful. Nurturing reversed some of the stress marks that neglect had written, the body re-annotating itself under kindness. Methylation is not permanent ink, it is editable. This suggests that an inherited posture of vigilance is not a sentence, a life of safety, warmth, and attention may, in part, rewrite what a harder past wrote. The whisper carried across generations can be answered. What was tuned toward fear can, with time and tenderness, be tuned back toward rest. Consider what this means for a feeling of belonging. If a faint tuning toward certain environments rides along in biology, then the comfort some people feel in mountains, or by the sea, or among certain trees may be more than preference. It may be a body recognizing the conditions its lineage was calibrated to, easing in a world it expected. This stays speculative, a hypothesis rather than a proven fact, but it offers a tender reading of homesickness for unseen places. That the longing is a kind of correctness, a body quietly noticing where it fits, and aching toward it. The theory also touches how we think about dreams of places. If the sleeping brain builds from inherited materials, then recurring dream landscapes might draw on tilts laid down before birth, recombined nightly into scenes that feel ancient. You wake homesick for a country your dreaming mind assembled from deep predispositions. There is no village to find, no map to follow. Yet the feeling is honest. The implication is that some of our most haunting inner places are co-authored, written partly by the long inheritance in our cells and partly by the imagination that works while we sleep. Neither fully ours nor fully borrowed. If posture rather than picture is what we inherit, then much of human culture can be seen as the missing channel for picture, where biology cannot pass a detailed memory. Story can, a grandparent's tale of a homeland, repeated and loved, becomes a kind of inherited place, carried in a child who never saw it. We evolved language and song partly to do what the genome cannot, to hand specific worlds across time. So the feeling of ancestral memory may be culture's success, not biology's. The longing for an unseen home is then a sign of how deeply we are made of one another's words. This blurs the line between memory and identity. If you carry inherited tilts and inherited stories, then who you are includes people you never met. The self begins to look less like an island and more like a confluence, where many streams meet for the length of a life. The implication is quietly consoling. The feeling of being known by a place you have never visited may be the feeling of recognizing your own composition, sensing the lives that flow through you. Nostalgia for the unseen becomes a form of self-recognition, the present meeting the long past it is made from. There is a sobering implication too. If hardship can write marks that cross generations, then injustice has a biological afterlife. The conditions imposed on one generation may shadow the bodies of the next. A scientific argument for the long reach of history into flesh. Researchers raise this carefully, because the evidence is partial and the stakes are high, but it changes how we might think about repair, suggesting that healing a wounded generation could matter not only for them, but for descendants who would otherwise inherit the tuning of their pain. The whisper, if it crosses, makes the case for kindness as a long investment. All these implications share a single shift, from the gene as destiny to the gene as conversation. The old story made DNA a fixed fate. The new story makes it a dialogue. The code speaking and the world answering. The reading adjusted by hunger and safety, by neglect and care. Across the length of lineages, you are a line in that conversation, shaped by what came before and shaping what comes after. The feeling of homecoming in a strange place may be one moment when the conversation grows briefly audible, when the long exchange between your code and the world surfaces as a wordless sense of recognition. Yet the leash on speculation stays tight here. Everything tender we have drawn out rests on a foundation that is real but still settling. That marks exist. That some cross generations, that care can edit them. These are supported. If debated, that any of this produces a specific feeling of a specific place has not been shown and may never be. Because the channel is too narrow to carry scenes, the implications are worth holding for their meaning, not mistaken for proven mechanism. The honest stance keeps the wonder and the doubt in the same hand, which is, in truth, where the most interesting science always lives. 50 facts in, and the question has turned. We began asking how a strange place could feel like home. We have found that nearly everything required for the feeling is real, except the literal memory, which has no pathway. The brain makes sourceless recognition. Nurture passes buried places. Biology carries faint tilts that can ease a body in certain worlds. What the second half follows is the harder question hidden under all of this. If the feeling is built from so many true and quiet things, then what is it actually for? And why does it move us so deeply? That is the tension the rest of tonight carries. The question that just opened. What this feeling is for is not only a question about biology. You may be carrying it right now. A quiet longing towards something you cannot name or place. A sense of missing a home you have never had. That ache is not a flaw in you. It may be the oldest parts of you recognizing how much you are made of others. And reaching back, notice your breath. Moving without your help, it keeps its rhythm even while the longing stays open. Now, we continue. Begin the second half with what the brain does every night, because it reshapes how we should read these feelings during sleep, especially in the deep and dreaming stages. The brain replays and reorganizes the day, consolidating some memories and pruning others. In this nightly editing, the line between what happened and what was imagined softens. A scene rehearsed in a dream can be filed near a real one, so the brain itself blurs the boundary. Tonight's theory hangs on, manufacturing familiarity for things it only invented. The feeling of having been somewhere is, in part, a nightly product of the mind tidying itself during dreaming sleep. The brain region that judges reality grows quiet, while the regions that generate imagery and emotion run freely. This is why dreams feel real, and why their places can be loved. When you wake, that loved place has no address. Yet the feeling persists into the day, over a lifetime of nights. The mind accumulates a private geography of dreamed places, mostly forgotten, occasionally surfacing as recognition when the waking world stumbles upon a match. Much of the nostalgia for unseen places may be this: the quiet return of inner landscapes built in sleep and lost on waking, recognized without their origin. The brain stores the feeling of familiarity separately from the content of a memory. In different circuits, this is the master clue, because they are separate. The feeling can be triggered alone, with no content attached. Patients with certain conditions can feel intense recognition for total strangers. The familiarity signal firing without any matching memory. This proves the architecture allows pure familiarity. Recognition as a free-floating feeling. So a place can feel known not because it is known, but because the recognition circuit fired, and the storytelling mind then searched for something, anything, to explain a sensation that had, in truth, no source at all. Integrate this with inheritance, and a clearer model appears. Your inherited tilts set the background. Perhaps a body more easily moved by open water, by a certain quality of dusk. Your dreams and forgotten exposures fill the foreground with half-remembered scenes, and the brain's familiarity circuit provides the trigger, firing recognition when the world matches closely enough. The feeling of homecoming in a strange place is then a collaboration, ancient tuning, private invention, and a recognition switch, all converging in one instant. No single one is the cause. The mystery was never one thing. It was the meeting of several true things in a single ache. This collaborative model also explains why the feeling is so personal and so common at once. Everyone has the same familiarity circuit, the same dreaming brain, the same kind of inheritance. So nearly everyone feels these moments, yet each person's tilts and dreams and forgotten exposures are unique. So each person's homecomings attach to different places. The universal machinery produces a feeling that feels intimately, specifically yours. That is the texture of the deepest human experiences, shared in mechanism and unrepeatable in detail. The longing for an unseen home belongs to everyone, and to no two people the same way. What becomes possible, once we see the feeling this way, is to stop needing it to be supernatural, to be meaningful. The longing does not require a past life to matter. It is already remarkable that a body can carry the tuning of ancestors, that a mind can build and lose whole worlds in sleep, that a single circuit can hand you recognition like a gift with no return address. The wonder survives the explanation intact. We do not lose the magic by understanding it. We trade a borrowed mystery for a truer one, rooted in cells and dreams and the strange generosity of the brain, memory and imagination. Science now understands, run on largely the same neural machinery. The brain regions that reconstruct the past are the same ones that build possible futures and imagined places. To remember is to imagine backward. To imagine is to remember forward. This shared machinery is why a vividly imagined place can feel as real as a remembered one, and why the difference can blur. Tonight's feeling lives precisely in that blur, where the mind cannot quite tell whether it is recalling or inventing, and settles on the only verdict that fits the depth of feeling. This is a memory from somewhere I cannot reach. There is a reason this blur tilts toward beauty rather than alarm. The feeling of familiarity carries a faint reward, a small comfort the brain attaches to the known. Because in our long history, the familiar was the safe. So when recognition fires for an unfamiliar place, it arrives already gentle, already kind. The brain says known and means safe, and the body relaxes into a place it has never seen. This is why the experience so often feels like homecoming rather than confusion. The machinery that produces it is, at heart, a machinery of reassurance, telling you that you belong here. Even here, integrate the inheritance once more. Gently. If among your inherited tilts is a stress system tuned by ancestors toward a particular kind of vigilance or calm, then certain places will quiet that system and others will rouse it. Below, all thought, a landscape that settles your inherited nervous system feels simply right. And the rightness can bloom into the sense of having come home. You are not remembering the place. Your oldest biology is recognizing a fit. The feeling is a body finding. In the present world, conditions its lineage was tuned to expect, and exhaling at the match. Consider how this reframes the people who feel perpetually homesick for nowhere, who carry a longing that no actual home resolves. The model suggests they are not broken, but perhaps unusually attuned. Their familiarity circuit generous. Their inherited tilts strong. Their dreaming vivid. All combining into a longing that the literal world can never quite satisfy, because its true object is internal and ancestral. Naming this can be a relief. The ache is not a sign that something is missing from your life. It may be a sign of how much life is in you. How many streams meet in your particular self? The brain's default state, when it is not focused on a task, is to wander through memory and imagination. Much of it about people and places. This wandering network is most active in rest, in the drift before sleep. It is in exactly these unfocused moments that nostalgia for unseen places most often surfaces. When the mind, freed from the present, rambles through its private geography of the real, the dreamed, and the inherited, the longing tends to arrive at the edges of the day, in the soft hours, because that is when the machinery that produces it is most at liberty to roam. This is also why such feelings deepen at dusk and in tiredness. As the brain relaxes its grip on sharp reality, the boundary between perceived and imagined softens, and the familiarity circuit fires more easily. The same conditions that make déjà vu more common when you are tired make the homesickness for unseen places more likely in the evening. The world grows a little dreamlike, and the inner geography rises closer to the surface. There is a fittingness in this. The longing for an ancient home belongs to the hour when the day itself is going home, when everything leans toward rest. Integrate the cultural channel into the model fully, because it may carry more than we think. The stories, image, and feelings handed down in a family or a people settle into a child below conscious memory, forming a buried template of beloved places. This template is specific in a way biology cannot be, holding scenes, not just tilts. When the world later matches the template, recognition fires with content, and the place feels not just safe but known. Much of the most vivid nostalgia for unseen places may flow through this channel. The inheritance of imagination passed in words and pictures across generations. So the inheritance arrives by two routes that feel like one. Biology hands down the tilt, the posture, the readiness. Culture hands down the scene, the story, the specific beloved place. They meet in a single feeling that cannot tell its own sources apart. This is why ancestral longing feels so unified and so deep. It is doubly inherited. In code and in care. In chemistry and in story. The feeling of homecoming in a strange land is the convergence of everything that made you, surfacing at once, and mistaking its own richness for a memory of a single place. The pattern across these 65 facts is becoming hard to miss. The feeling we have chased is not a single thing with a single cause, but a convergence. The meeting of inherited biology, inherited culture, private dreaming, and a brain built to manufacture recognition and color it with comfort. The big idea is almost visible now. It is not that you remember a place you never saw. It is that the self is a meeting place. And the longing is the feeling of that meeting becoming briefly conscious. The final third carries this quietly into the open, where science gives way to something more human. Notice that none of this diminishes you to mere mechanism. A confluence is still a singular thing. No two are alike. That you are made of inheritances does not make you less yourself. It makes your particular self a once-only event. A specific gathering of streams that has never occurred before and will not again. The longing for an unseen home, read this way, is a kind of intimacy with your own existence. A moment of feeling how many lives and stories and nights converge to make the one who is feeling it. The mechanism, fully understood, returns you to wonder. Integrate one more finding about how memory ages. Over time, the brain strips memories of their specific detail and keeps their gist, their feeling, their shape. Old memories become less like footage and more like impressions. A mood, a quality of light, a sense of place without its particulars. This is how memory naturally drifts toward exactly the kind of vague, sourceless familiarity. Tonight, circles. Given enough years, even a true memory can lose its origin and become a feeling of having been somewhere. Untethered from when or where, the mind manufactures the unplaceable simply by remembering long enough. This means some nostalgia for unseen places may be true memories worn smooth, a scene witnessed in early childhood, before the brain could file it with time and place, can persist as pure feeling, surfacing decades later as recognition without source. The infant brain records impressions long before it can label them, and those impressions can outlast every conscious trace of their making. So a place may feel known because you truly saw it once, before memory as you know it had begun. The unseen home was sometimes seen by eyes too young to keep the receipt. Integrate the emotional core, because it is where the science and the feeling finally join. Familiarity fires beside emotion. Recognition arrives soaked in feeling. The comfort of the known is built into the signal. So whatever its source, the feeling of homecoming is, at bottom, a feeling of safety and belonging delivered by ancient circuitry. The mind's verdict, known, is also a verdict. Safe, also a verdict. You belong. This is why the longing aches rather than merely puzzles. It touches the oldest human need, to belong somewhere, and answers it. Briefly, in a place you have never been. Step back and see what we have built. A feeling once explained by past lives now stands on 4 quiet pillars. A familiarity circuit that can fire without content. An inheritance of biological tilt. An inheritance of cultural scene. And a dreaming mind that builds and loses worlds. Each is real. Together they account for the longing without anything supernatural and without losing an ounce of its depth. The integration is nearly complete. What remains is not more mechanism, but meaning. The turn from how the feeling works to what it offers. Why a body would be built to feel at home where it has never been. One offering is continuity. To feel an ancient home is to feel that you did not begin from nothing, that you are the latest moment in something long, in a life that can feel small and brief. This sense of depth is a quiet gift, a reminder that you are held in a stream older than your worries. The feeling does not need to be literally true to do this work. It functions as continuity, whether its source is code or culture or a worn childhood impression. The longing connects you backward, and being connected backward is its own kind of rest. Another offering is reassurance in the unfamiliar. We are a species that has always moved into new lands, and a mind that could find the unknown, faintly familiar, would travel with less fear. The capacity to feel at home where you have never been may be an old adaptation for a wandering animal, a way of softening the strangeness of the new. Read this way. The longing is not only nostalgia, but courage, a biology that lets you arrive somewhere new and feel, against all reason, that you might belong here too. The unseen home is also a permission to go. A third offering is connection to others. If much of what you feel as ancestral longing flows from inherited culture, from stories and care handed down, then the feeling is a thread to the people who made you. To ache for an unseen home is to be quietly accompanied, to carry the loves and losses of those who came before in a form gentle enough to feel as your own. The longing is a kind of company. You are never quite alone in it, because it is, in part, made of others, surfacing in you as if it had always been yours. Hold all three offerings together: continuity, courage, connection, and the feeling reveals its quiet purpose. It is a way the long human story keeps reminding each new life that it is held, that it can go forward unafraid, that it is made of love already given. Whether the mechanism is methylation or memory or story matters less than this function, which the feeling performs the same regardless of source. The science explains the how, the function explains the why, and the why is tender, to keep us connected across time, to a home that was never a single place but always a belonging. 75 facts in. The big idea can be stated plainly. In its intellectual form, the nostalgia you feel for places you have never seen is not the memory of a place. It is the felt convergence of everything that made you. Your inherited biology, your inherited culture, your dreamed and forgotten worlds, surfacing through a brain built to deliver recognition as comfort. It is the self, briefly aware of how much larger than itself it is. The remaining facts carry a different quality. They will no longer build the case. They will let the feeling settle into what it means. In the body. Tonight, generations turn the way, seasons turn, each one rising from the last without being asked, passing something forward without effort or instruction. Right now you are a single turning in that long cycle, carrying what was handed to you, already handing it on, without doing anything at all. The marks in your cells were placed by that turning. The longing you feel is that turning, made briefly conscious. The facts that remain tonight do not need to be understood. They only need to arrive at the place you are already moving toward. We're almost there. The home you long for may not lie behind you in time, but beneath you, in the simple fact of being made of others. It is not a country to find, but a depth to feel. And the feeling, once recognized, asks nothing of you. It only wants to be felt. Tonight, you can let it be felt. Without searching for the place, the longing was never a map. It was a kind of belonging, arriving as ache only because it had no other language. The body that holds these inheritances is, in this moment, slowing. The The same cells that carry the marks of ancestors are quieting their work for the night. Whatever was tuned high is settling. You do not have to direct any of it. It happens the way the long cycle has always happened, continuing through you while you rest. The inheritance does not need your attention to remain, so you can stop watching and let the oldest parts of you carry the night. There is a quiet peace in being unoriginal. In the deepest sense, you did not have to invent yourself from nothing. So much was already given. The tilts, the stories, the capacity for love and rest. You inherited a starting place. Tonight, you can lean into that gift. The relief of not being the first, of arriving into a body already prepared by countless lives to do this simple thing. To lie down, to breathe, to sleep. The places that move us most are often the ones that match something we cannot name. A field, a shoreline, a window at dusk. You do not have to find the original. The feeling itself is the homecoming, complete in the having. Tonight, if a remembered place rises, let it rise without chasing it. The way you let a cloud pass without naming its shape. It came to keep you company. It can stay as long as it likes. All the science of this hour comes down to a quiet truth the body already knew. You belong, not to a single place, but to a long line, a deep stream, a turning cycle that holds you now. The longing was only that belonging, asking to be felt, and it is felt most fully here, in stillness, where the home you ached for turns out to be the very rest you are sinking into. The inheritance flows in both directions. Just as you carry what came before, you are already, quietly, what those who come after will carry. The calm of this night may settle as faintly into your line as a hardship would. So resting well is not only for you, it is a gift handed forward, a tuning toward peace passed along the stream. By resting deeply tonight, you tend something far larger than this one night. Notice how little effort any of this required. The marks crossed generations on their own. The familiarity fired on its own. The longing arrived on its own. Uninvited. Complete. None of it asked you to work, and sleep is the same. It is not a task to accomplish, but a current already moving through you. The oldest cycle of all, asking only that you stop resisting it. You have done enough chasing tonight. Now, let the current carry you. The dreaming you are drifting toward will build its own places now, as it does every night. Some may feel ancient, some may feel like home. You do not have to remember them, or find them, or understand them. Let your sleeping mind do what it has always done. Assemble worlds from everything you carry and let them dissolve by morning. You can trust it. It built the homes you have longed for. And it can build more. Somewhere in your cells, a methyl group sits where an ancestor's life once placed it. Quiet, faithful, asking nothing. It will be there in the morning. It was there when you woke today. It is a small steadiness inside you, a continuity that needs no tending from you at all. You can rest against it the way you would rest against something that has held still for a very long time. The oldest parts of you are the most patient. The feeling of having been somewhere before is, at its kindest, a feeling of not being a stranger to the world. Tonight, you are not a stranger to this room, to this hour, to this rest. The world is familiar because you are made of the world. The same elements, the same long inheritance. There is nowhere you could go where you would be entirely new. You belong everywhere a little. because everything that made you came from somewhere. Let the longing soften now from an ache into a warmth. It has done its work tonight. It brought you to this stillness, this gentle gratitude. It does not have to ache anymore. You can let it become simply the warm sense of being held by something long and old and kind. The places you have never seen can rest too, quiet on their distant horizons. You found the home they pointed toward. It was here, in the rest. All along, your breath is doing what breath has done for every ancestor in your unbroken line. Back and back, beyond counting. Not one of them failed to breathe. That is why you are here. You are the living end of an unbroken chain of breathing. And tonight your breath continues it. Slow and easy in the dark. There is company in that. The whole long line breathing through you. All of them having simply rested as you rest now. The room around you holds you the way the womb once held a tuning you cannot remember. The way the world has held every generation before. You do not have to do anything to be held. It is already happening. The weight of the blanket. The dark. The quiet. These are the present moment's version of a very old safety. The safety your biology was tuned across ages to trust. Let your body recognize it now. You are safe. You can sleep. Everything tonight has been a long way of saying that you are not alone. And never were. You are accompanied by everyone who made you. Carried in your cells and your stories, and your capacity for this very feeling. The longing for an unseen home was their quiet presence. Mistaken for a place, now you can feel it as presence. As company. As a hand on the long thread, you are surrounded. Even here. Even in the dark. The reading. The turning. The long inheritance. Were always happening. With or without your noticing. Tonight you finally noticed. And now you can stop noticing and simply let them run. That is the only instruction the body ever needed. To stop adding. To stop chasing. To let the old cycle carry you. You have done that now. The longing brought you here. And here is enough. There is only the rest you were always moving toward. Opening softly around you. Feel how the longing and the rest have become the same thing. What pulled at you was always pulling you here. Toward stillness. Toward belonging. Toward sleep. The unseen home and this quiet room are not two places, but one feeling. Arriving finally where it always meant to go. You can let the last of the searching dissolve. There is no horizon left to reach toward. The horizon is here. In the dark, behind your eyes, the cells continue their quiet inheritance. The mind begins to build its nightly worlds. The breath keeps the long line unbroken. None of it needs you now. You can let your awareness grow soft and wide. No longer holding any single thought. The way a landscape at dusk lets go of its sharp edges and becomes one gentle shape. You are becoming that gentle shape now. The day's particulars blurring into the deeper familiarity beneath them. If a place rises in the fading light behind your eyes, let it be a kindness, not a question. You do not have to find it. It found you. To keep you company into sleep. Let it stay as gently as it likes. The field, the shore, the doorway, the light. These are friends now, not mysteries. They came from the deep parts of you to walk you to the edge of sleep. And there they will gently leave you. Nothing waiting for you tomorrow asks anything of you tonight. The whole long inheritance that made you knew how to rest. Or you would not be here, so you already know how. It is written beneath your thoughts, older than your worry, patient as stone. Let that knowing take over now. While the part of you that thinks and chases finally, gratefully, goes quiet, the oldest you knows the way home. The feeling that began this hour as an ache has become, by its end, a kind of peace. That is what understanding can do. Not erase a feeling, but ripen it. Turn longing into belonging, mystery into rest. You followed the unseen home all the way down to where it lives, and found it was you all along, the deep made self, lying down at the end of a long day. There is nothing left to do but let it close over you. Let the dark be the home now, not a place from the past, not a country in a dream, but this, the simple dark of a night that holds you. Everything that made you brought you here. Everyone who came before rests in you, and rests now. The longing is answered. The question is closed. Gently, not with a fact, but with a feeling. The feeling of having finally arrived somewhere you can stay. Stay, there is nowhere else to go. The breath grows slower, the body grows heavier. The long line breathes through you. Easy in the dark. You are returning in an old cycle, settling toward its rest, the way every turning before it settled. Without effort, without fear, there is no place to find. There is only this, the deep and quiet belonging that was always underneath the longing, waiting patiently for you to stop searching and simply lie down inside it, somewhere far beneath thought. The oldest part of you recognizes this rest and says, gently, home, not a place, a condition, the condition of being held by everything that made you, asking nothing, simply present, simply yours. You can let that recognition be the last clear thing, and then let even it dissolve into the soft and shapeless dark where there is no longer any place at all, only rest, only belonging. The recognition fades, the belonging stays. There is nothing more to understand and nothing more to feel except this gentle weight, this slow breath, this dark that holds you like a home, older than memory. The longing brought you here and has gone quiet now. Its work complete. The cells keep their faithful marks. The mind opens its quiet worlds, and you, the living confluence of so much, let go of all of it and rest. You are held. You are home. The answer was never a place you had been. It was the belonging underneath the longing. The long, quiet fact of being made of others, surfacing as an ache only because it had no other way to reach you. Tonight it reached you, and the ache became rest. There is no home to find. You are the home, gathered from everyone before you, lying down at the end of the day. Let the long line breathe you down into sleep. You are home. The feeling that opened this hour as an unplaceable ache turned out to be made of things entirely real. A familiarity circuit that can fire with nothing behind it. A faint molecular tuning, carried out of a famine winter or a hard generation. Written into how your genes are read. Dreamed places built and lost in the night. None of it was a memory of a country you had seen. All of it was the quiet convergence of everything that made you, surfacing at once. What felt like longing for a distant home was the self, becoming briefly aware of how much larger than itself it is. What you carry out of tonight is not a theory about DNA. It is the felt sense that you were never a stranger here, never the first, never alone. that you are made of others and held by a line far older than your own brief worry. Perhaps tonight loosened a longing you have carried a long time without a name. A gentle like, subscribe, or share keeps this quiet place findable for others who ache for a home they cannot place and do not yet know they are not alone in it. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. Right now, in your cells, the marks left by lives you never knew are sitting quietly, faithful, asking nothing of you. The long line that made you is breathing through you in this very moment. Slow and unbroken in the dark. You don't have to hold any of it. It holds itself. Let your entire being dissolve into that long, quiet inheritance. The stream that carried everyone before you and carries you now. You don't need to direct it. It already knows the way home. You can let these thoughts drift away now. The way a memory loses its edges over many years until only a soft feeling remains. Let your body grow heavy with the rest that was always underneath the longing. Sleep carries you down into the belonging you spent the whole night searching for. The home that was never a place. The Dream Science to Fall Asleep To playlist has been moving through territory like this for a long time. And the next video carries it further. That video is waiting whenever you are ready. But if your eyes are closed, stay there. Rest well. Gentle soul, you were never the first, and never alone. Where science becomes the softest place to rest. Good night.